This is an all-you-need-to-know beginner's guide for picking up Farseer Restoration Shaman in M+. Run these talents, which you will find in the video description. In terms of stats, aim for a balance of crit and haste over versatility over mastery. As a Farseer Shaman, you have 3 core healing abilities, each of which has the potential to be empowered. The first of these abilities is Riptide. It provides a small initial heal to your target as well as a moderately powerful healing over time effect. Riptide has 3 charges, and each cast of Riptide grants you 2 stacks of tidal waves, increasing the critical strike chance of your next healing surge by 30% or reducing the cast time of your next chain heal by 20%. Let's start with Healing Surge. Healing Surge is your main single target healing ability, therefore use it for tank healing as well as for healing individual players with damaging effects on them. As a rule of thumb, you never want to cast Healing Surge without tidal waves active, so you want to be using Riptide a lot to maintain those precious tidal waves stacks. Healing Surge's healing can be further empowered by up to 60% via Master of the Elements. That is, each time you cast Lava Burst, you will get 1 out of a maximum of 2 stacks of Master of the Elements, empowering the healing of your Healing Surge by 30% each. Consequently, as a Restoration Shaman, you are incentivized to weave in Lava Bursts as a damaging ability, as it directly interacts with the power of your single target healing. Simply make it a habit to press Lava Bursts whenever there is nothing to heal. Ideally, you will want to apply Flame Shock to your target in this case, as Lava Burst will always critically strike targets affected by Flame Shock. For group healing, your go-to healing spell is Chain Heal. It heals your main target and then bounces to 3 other targets, with its healing being reduced by 30% after each bounce. Chain Heal can be empowered in 2 ways. First, like Healing Surge, it is empowered by Tidal Waves, which grants a 20% cast time reduction. Second, if you run Flow of the Tides, Chain Heal's healing is enhanced by 30% when cast on a target affected by Riptide, consuming the Riptide buff in the process. Therefore, prioritize targets affected by your Riptide to substantially enhance the power of your chain heals. However, if that sounds a bit too complicated for you, you can swap the Flow of the Tides talent for Ancestral Reach, in which case your base chain heal will be stronger, but it will not be empowered by consuming Riptides. Finally, Chain Heal also closes the gameplay loop between Healing Surge, Chain Heal and Riptide by granting you 1 stack of Coalescing Water, enhancing the healing of your next Riptide by 75% with a maximum of 2 stacks. When Coalescing Water is active, make sure to consume it by using Riptide, as it dramatically enhances the potency of Riptide's initial heal. Before we get further into the Farseer Specifics, let's briefly sum up the core gameplay loop. First, use Riptide to proc Tidal Waves. Second, based on the situational requirements, consume Tidal Waves using either Healing Surge for single target healing or Chain Heal for group healing. Third, consume the Coalescing Water buff acquired by casting Chain Heal to feed back into the power of your Riptides, thereby renewing your Tidal Wave stacks and keeping the empowerment of Healing Surge and Chain Heal rolling. Finally, cast Lava Burst to further empower Healing Surges via Master of the Elements whenever you find the time. Now, if you went into a dungeon equipped with only this knowledge, you might be able to keep your group alive, but it would be quite the struggle, and that's because most of Farseer's power lies hidden in its hero talents. Here, Call of the Ancestors gives you the power to summon your long-forgotten forefathers to your side, drastically amplifying your healing. When an ancestor is active, it will mirror your damage and healing spells, and your core goal as a Farseer Shaman is to hang out with your ancestors as much as possible. The first way of summoning an ancestor to your side is via Unleash Life. Unleash Life itself empowers your next healing spell, but that's not its main purpose here. You should absolutely use Unleash Life on cooldown and never wait until you need its healing empowerment. As the Ancestor lasts for 16 seconds, but the cooldown of Unleash Life is only 15 seconds, you should therefore always have at least 1 Ancestor at your side. Second, if you have the Foresight bonus, you can summon 2 Ancestors via Ancestral Swiftness, which additionally makes your next healing or damage spell instant cast. Again, the intuitive solution might be to use Ancestral Swiftness only when you really need that instant heal, but do not fall into that trap. As you do with Unleash Life, it is generally good advice to use Ancestral Swiftness on cooldown as well. However, if you're a more experienced player, you might want to align it more closely with big damage events if you know when they are going to happen, especially since you'll also get an 8-second healing amplifier from your Farseer after casting Ancestral Swiftness. Still, whatever you do, do not sit on your Ancestral Swiftness. If you're unsure about when to use it, simply using it on cooldown is infinitely better than holding it for too long. Good general advice when starting fights is to apply Flame Shock to an enemy target, pop Unleash Life and Ancestral Swiftness afterwards, and consume Ancestral Swiftness for an instant cast Lava Burst. This has the advantage of building Master of the Elements stacks immediately, but it also deals a lot of damage as each of the 3 ancestors at your side will mirror your Lava Burst cast. As a rule of thumb for dealing damage, you generally want to cast Lava Burst for single target DPS and Chain Lightning when there are more than 2 targets. Next, Farseer's healing gets a little bit more complicated with the use of Cloudburst Totem, which is a 2-phase ability. First, pressing it places a totem on the ground, which will last for 18 seconds and collect 24% of all the healing you're doing during this time. Note that the 24% are added to your healing, so the collection does not reduce your healing while the totem is placed. Second, you can press the button again, reactivating the totem and releasing the stored healing inside of it, which is then evenly distributed among all eligible targets. So, in principle, you want to collect as much healing as possible in the totem and then use it toward the end of its duration to release a large amount of healing. In my opinion, the use of Cloudburst Totem is where much of the difficulty and nuance of Farseer Restoration Shaman comes from, as it requires you to plan ahead and know which damage events are coming up so that the release of the stored healing is actually useful and does not go to waste. 2 more things about Cloudburst Totem. First, both the activation and the reactivation of the totem are on the global cooldown, which can make using it feel very clunky. Therefore, you ideally want to place it down before damage is happening, as you will often not be able to waste the global for placing it when you're in a pinch. Second, overhealing is also stored in the totem, so you can theoretically use it to set up for a big damage event ahead of time by spamming healing into the totem, even though no damage is currently happening. While this is not mana efficient, it can be useful to power through big healing checks, like Big Mama's Jumpstart in Floodgate, for example. Okay, I lied. There's a third thing about Cloudburst Totem, which is that I highly recommend downloading the Cloudburst Totem Weak Aura that I have linked in the video description. As you can see on my screen, it allows you to track for how long the totem will last and how much healing is stored inside it already, helping you tremendously with planning its release. Relying on Blizzard's base interface here is unfortunately a rather inadequate solution. Next up, you also do some passive healing as a Farseer Shaman via Earth Shield. Any healing you do on targets affected by Earth Shield is increased by 20%, and the shield itself provides a small amount of passive healing. You can maintain 2 Earth Shields at the same time, one on yourself and one on another player. As a beginner, it's perfectly okay to place Earth Shield on yourself and on the tank at the start of the dungeon and then leave it there. However, as you get more advanced, you'll want to move it to players who are taking the heaviest damage in certain situations, primarily because of the 20% healing increase. Finally, Healing Wave is the more mana efficient but weaker version of Healing Surge. It's not very strong and you should probably just never use it. Speaking of useless abilities, Healing Rain is a dead ability as well and should not be used. Alright, let's now talk about your cooldowns. Your main healing cooldown is Ascendance, which duplicates 70% of your healing and distributes it as additional AoE healing to the entire group. Ascendance is very strong, but you should try not to treat it like a big emergency button that is seldomly used. Instead, I'd recommend using it almost on cooldown, while reserving your other 2 main healing cooldowns for those emergencies. The first of those is Healing Tide Totem, which provides a large amount of steady, pulsing AoE healing. The second is Spirit Link Totem, which reduces incoming damage by 10% for everyone inside its area, while also evenly redistributing their HP. Spirit Link can be a powerful tool as it lets you leverage tank healing for group healing while it is active. Also, the HP redistribution mechanic makes Spirit Link a potent cooldown for single target healing, as the damage on a single target will be redistributed across all players. Finally, you have a smaller cooldown in Spirit Walker's Grace, which lets you cast while moving. On the side of defensives, make sure to use Astral Shift to reduce incoming damage by 40% and Stone Bulwark Totem to give yourself a shield. Also, you should try to make effective use of Wind Shear, as the short cooldown ranged interrupt is one of the main selling points of Resto Shaman. Lastly, don't forget to buff your weapon with Earth Living and yourself with Water Shield. All in all, this guide should give you a solid foundation for starting your journey as a Farseer Restoration Shaman. However, if you're new to healing, you might also want to check out some more general advice on how to improve as a healer. If that sounds interesting to you, check out this video over here. In it, you will also learn how to make the weak auras for tracking buffs like tidal waves or coalescing water on your screen, which you might have noticed in my UI during this video. If you liked the video, like it, and let me know if you'd like to see an in-depth guide for Farseer Shaman going into advanced spell sequences and talent interactions. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and see ya.